Thank you for joining us today on Connect and Collaborate, where we come together each day to introduce you to our network of business and community leaders and to discuss important issues that impact business in Colorado and the region. I'm Tammy Schaefer, your on-air producer, and today we're connecting with Leading to Lean. I have Kristen Muzzy here with me with another special guest lined up as well.
I know,
Kristen.
it's exciting. It's great to be here. It's always good to be here.
Great to have you back.
Yeah, happy Friday, everybody.
Exactly.
Do you believe it's December 8th?
I know,
Right?
as some people would say, it's like, and December's half over.
I know.
Kristen Muzzy is the Executive Vice President of Business Development for Leading to Lean, an advocate for manufacturing in Colorado and nationwide, and lots of great stuff going on.
I know. We've got a wonderful show today. Super excited to have Richard Rahn, who's a principal for the Leonardo Group Americas, which is a lean consulting company based in Boulder, Colorado. And Richard, welcome to the show. I want to give a little bit of background. We've got Richard via Skype today. Hi, Richard.
Yeah, hi. Thank you, Kristen. Pleasure to be here.
Richard's in Florida today, so we're delighted to have you via Skype. So Richard's, as I said, he's principal of the Leonardo Group Americas, which again is a lean consulting company based in Colorado. Over the last 22 years, he's introduced flow manufacturing to some of the best-known companies in the world, including GE, Johnson & Johnson, John Deere, Fender Musical Instruments, and dozens of other large and small manufacturing companies. He's trained over 8,000 engineers and lean professionals and is the co-author of the Lean Source book, The Complete Guide to Mixed Model Line Design. I have that book and it's great. I haven't got all the way through it, but it's very good. As well as Aerospace Flow and Fundamentals of Flow Manufacturing. And along with Gerard Leone, he has also co-authored 6 books on the application of lean to healthcare, including the Roadmap for the Lean Hospital. The Leonardo Group has also brought their live hospital and manufacturing workshops online at their website, leandesigninstitute.com. Richard has a very interesting background. He was raised in Manila, Philippines, and Mexico City, Mexico.
Oh, wow.
He teaches and consults in Spanish and English. He graduated cum laude from Middlebury College in Vermont, received his MBA from the University of Colorado, is an APIX certified in production inventory management. He's a former material manager with Ball Aerospace in Broomfield, and he was a manager of international distributors with Storage Tech in Louisville, Colorado. Should we add a few more things? We can add that you also make guitars.
Yes. Well, yeah, there's some more things, but I wanted to at least communicate that I had a real job in my past rather than just being a consultant.
And you also were a DJ.
Yes, in college.
Yes.
A rock and roll DJ, so we have that in common too.
Yes, we do. So today Tammy, we're gonna talk about lean manufacturing and Darwin.
Really?
Yeah.
Darwin and the future of learning.
Exactly. Yeah. So
sounds intriguing.
It does, right?
Yeah.
So a lot of people don't know what lean manufacturing is, but lean is lean was developed. It was a term that was coined back in I want to say 1990 by Womack and Jones, right? Richard?
Yeah, that's right.
And it developed really out of Toyota Production Systems, or a lot of people will know it as TPS.
Okay.
But lean, some people think of the word lean and they're like, oh, this is, chopping heads, reducing the workforce. But,
right.
But no, what it really is it's about eliminating waste in a production process. So there's 7 different types of waste.
Whether it's materials or steps or...
Materials, steps, quality issues, engineer design, process lines, and but lean what it does. Bottom line is it reduces costs, improves quality, improves throughput, and there's been a lot of study and many manufacturers have adopted lean to their benefit. Right? I mean, if you're not operating lean, then you're probably not in business.
Oh, wow.
or you're going to go out of business.
Yeah.
So Richard, you want to add to my definition?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes people think lean is an acronym, LEAN. And in fact, I heard that folks at Northrop Grumman, the aerospace company, thought that lean meant less employees at Northrop.
Oh, no.
But we had to straighten them out about that. But the origin of the word is kind of interesting. It was James Womack, who was the author of a book on lean, and they were trying to come up with a sexy catchphrase for these concepts and these ideas. And so they basically pulled out their pad of paper or their whiteboard, and they were brainstorming, and they said, well, what's different about this thing that up to that point was called just-in-time manufacturing or world-class manufacturing?
Right.
Oh, looks like Skype froze for a second. There we go.
Accomplish our goals with less inventory. So it's less of this. And less mistakes, fewer mistakes, better quality. Yeah. That's true. And what about fewer people, actually? More higher productivity. So they ended up with a list of less, and they thought, well, how do we describe that? And the word lean as an athlete, lack of fat came to mind. And so they coined that lean manufacturing, and it really caught on. So you're right, though. You mentioned that the origin of a lot of this comes from Toyota, or the Toyota production system. At least they formalized it and they branded it. But what we call lean manufacturing today is really a more generic version of that, right, of the Toyota production system.
Yeah, right.
And it's being applied all over the place.
It is, and you're doing it a lot in healthcare. Right?
Hospitals, I mean, anyone could improve, and this methodology is not just for building cars. It's for doing work, basically. So any kind of work can
now, if we can just introduce it into government, that would be ideal, right?
Some of my colleagues are spending a lot of time actually in the military, applying lean in the Air Force and
interesting
and other places there. So it is being bandied about.
Great. Well, we're going to come back and talk more about lean.
Absolutely. We'll talk more with Richard Rahn. He's the principal of Leonardo Group Americas. They're a lean consulting company as well. So a lot to talk about with Kristen Muzzy from Leading2Lean. We'll be right back here on Connect and Collaborate, the voice of the Colorado Business Roundtable. Stay with us after the break. Thanks so much for staying with us today here on Connect and Collaborate. We are talking with Kristen Muzzy from Leading2Lean.
It's great to be here,
Tammy.
So much.
Thanks
so
for
much.
filling in the words. I'm trying to get the definition of lean in manufacturing, but I'm going to leave that up to you and Richard.
Well, we can use the acronym that Richard gave, but no, I think I'll bypass the acronym.
Forget that one.
So today we're talking about lean manufacturing, Darwin, and the future of learning, and we have Richard Rahn, the principal of Leonardo Group Americas, and Richard's in Florida, and he's joining us via Skype today. He actually lives in Boulder, but he's joining us via Florida Skype today. So welcome, Richard. It's great to have you.
Okay, thanks. Yeah. Great to be back.
Yeah. So we're just talking about giving the definition of what lean is and lean manufacturing and where it came from. Was coined by Jim Womack and Jones in the famous book. What was that? The Greatest Machine.
The Machine That Changed the World.
There we go. The Machine That Changed the World. Yeah.
Yeah, and Lean Thinking was his other book.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So people, it's always surprising to me to find people that don't actually know what lean is. I guess that's just a reflection of my insular world. That's the world I live in. So I assume that everyone's familiar with it.
Yeah,
but
me too.
It might be a good idea to kind of review kind of what's involved with lean, because it is so important. And this show is Money Talk, and I'll have to say the most profitable companies in the world are applying this methodology of lean. I mean, you could arguably say that Toyota, certainly in their industries, are much more profitable than most of their competitors. So money has something to do with this as well as
absolutely right
as philosophy. But I'm dating myself a little bit in terms of my journey with lean by saying that I worked for Storage Tech in the 1980s.
Right.
But at that time we were competing not so much with IBM. Those of you familiar with Storage Tech, hard drives, disk drives, solid state storage, and our competitor when I was there, the companies we were really afraid of from a competitor point of view were not the IBMs of the world. or the Hewlett-Packards of the world. It was the Japanese in the 1980s. It was Hitachi and
right.
And especially Hitachi was a big one. And so this concept of world-class manufacturing was being bandied about, and we were trying to understand what that meant. But the assumption was, I think at that time, that this advantage that the Japanese had was something that we couldn't really copy because it was cultural. It had something to do with the DNA of the Japanese, and we couldn't really expect to do that here in the U.S., that we were kind of at a disadvantage. Well, later on we learned that wasn't exactly true. They were just doing things differently. It wasn't so much that they were born that way. They were learning things.
It was a systematic process.
Yeah, that we could emulate, if not copy, and do things in a similar kind of way. And so hordes of people at that time were going over to Japan to try to figure out what that secret was.
Right.
And who knows how much they were, learning or how accurate what they were bringing back was, but there was a tremendous amount of interest in finding out the secrets of the Toyota production system or the Japanese style of manufacturing.
Yes.
And so that was our world in terms of improvement and the world of competition during the 1980s. Now, as we mentioned, around 1990, there was a book that was written by James Womack from MIT that really kind of started documenting this in a little more methodical way. Prior to that, there were poorly translated Japanese books, really bad English and really hard to understand. And we started getting a better feel for what this was all about. And as you mentioned, the philosophy seemed to be eliminating waste, but also there seemed to be other elements like words like flow started being used, and culture, right? Building culture, and employee engagement and quality circles and those kind of things.
Which is a huge part of it. It's not just eliminating waste, because it's lean is a philosophy and it is a culture. I hear a lot, and you probably do too. It's from the CEO to the sweeper. Everybody is involved in lean, right? It's a culture. It's not a set of steps that you do. It is truly a culture and how we go about doing things.
Yeah, and the word culture sounds scary, to a lot of us when you think, well, how do we change our culture? But if you think of culture as just habits that we have, it's not easy to develop a new habit. Once you have it, it becomes very natural, and so the so-called culture, if you're inside of it, if you're inside the Toyota culture, for example, it's nothing special. It's just the way you do things. If you're outside of it, it seems very special and unique and kind of intimidating, maybe.
Right.
Inside of it, not so much after you get used to it.
Yeah.
But that's really what we're talking about. So. Up to that point in my journey, like say the early 90s,
I have a question for you though, Richard.
Sure,
how did you go from Middlebury, a liberal arts school, into storage tech manufacturing? I mean, this is just an interesting side note.
Oh, it wasn't a single step.
Yeah,
I bet.
Yeah, I moved to Boulder, actually. This has nothing to do with lean, but I moved to Boulder right after college to attend it was almost like the Summer of Love. It was a Buddhist, conference, summer program.
Okay.
Boulder in 1974. With all kinds of people that I'd been reading and learning. They were all going to be there, and I was in Houston, Texas, about 6 months after graduation. I just hopped in my little Volkswagen and drove to Boulder, and I never left. It was Niwat's curse, Chief Niwat's curse.
Sure.
Once you come to the Boulder Valley, you'll never leave.
Yeah.
That was true for me. So I've been here ever since.
Interesting.
But I realized at some point I was going to have to make a living.
Yeah.
And so I went back to grad school, went to CU.
Gotcha.
And that's something I want to touch on because the cost of education back when I was doing it was almost free.
Right.
I have to say. Almost in the 1970s. I think my annual tuition at CU was $500 a semester.
That just hurts our feelings.
Right.
Now, I don't know. Maybe that's more in present dollars, but not that much more.
Right.
So it was really.
Boy, have things changed, haven't they, Richard? I mean,
So I was able to put myself through grad school, working part-time and got my MBA.
Can't do that now.
Yeah.
I mean, very
and then
difficult.
MBA was, okay, now I have an MBA. Now what can I do? I spoke Spanish.
Yes.
I had an international background, and storage tech had a big export.
Okay.
Department. And so I joined them. That was great.
All right, interesting.
That's how that happened. But my lean education really started with Ball Aerospace. So I've got a Colorado employer background. Ball Aerospace in Broomfield sent a bunch of us to a class. Now this is 1989, I think it was.
Okay.
And that was the first time that I'd been trained in lean or heard something that was structured, that made sense. It was a kind of a step-by-step, something you could actually apply or do, as opposed to a philosophical, sounds good, but no idea how to actually apply this. And that was at a company called JCIT in Englewood, down in Englewood, Colorado. So that was a real eye-opener. That was a great experience for me, and that really got me on the road to wanting to make this a career.
Okay.
This is a lot of fun, and you get huge results.
Yeah.
You be a hero.
Right.
And so here I am, right after all these years.
So
doing it.
So you were at Ball, and then, but how did you get started out with the Leonardo? What prompted you to create the Leonardo Group?
Well, after at Ball in I think it was 94, the aerospace industry started sliding. I started looking for, what else do I want to do? And this lean stuff is just a lot of fun. So I just went back to the company that trained me, JCIT.
Oh, okay.
Asking for a job. I had to knock on their door 2 or 3 or 4 times, but finally they got tired of, sending me away, so they brought me in.
Gotcha.
And so I joined this consulting company. It's kind of hard to become a consultant in any field unless you have some experience, in that area. So working for a consulting company was really valuable.
Gotcha.
And my partner Gerard and I were both ended up being vice presidents at that company until around the year 2000 when we went off on our own.
Okay.
So it's a winding path, but there's some consistency to it. But today we continue to do this, work with companies, work with hospitals in terms of helping them implement this, training and then holding their hands, consulting or mentoring them.
So no, go ahead, Richard.
So I just wanted to say also that this thing about eliminating waste, lean is a way to eliminate waste. There's certainly truth to that, but we've had recently the chance to spend a lot of time in Toyota, which is maybe the gold standard for lean. And what we see there is they do certain things in a certain way. So they're definitely, the tools are not irrelevant. That they have ways of doing things, but what's really shocking and amazing is the culture part of it, the way they treat their people as a company, their values. You can go on the internet and look up the values, the corporate values or the statement of values for Enron Corporation. Remember them?
Oh, yes. How could we forget Enron?
Those values sound great. The Enron values.
Yeah,
right?
sound great.
Sound great. And likewise, Toyota has values, but when I saw the Toyota values on the wall in the lobby, this is in Columbus, Indiana, one of their factories, I thought, well, this is interesting because these are pretty good values, but they also do them, right? They also live these values, which was quite amazing to see. Things like be kind is one of the Toyota values,
Right.
Be a good person.
Right.
Treat others with generosity.
Makes a huge difference. The company you've met our company and our CEO and our core founder was trained by second generation TPS. And when I first got introduced to Leading to Lean, I experienced the same thing with our customers. It's definitely a culture. It's very, very different going into a lean organization.
We will talk more with Kristen Muzzy and Richard Rahn, principal with Leonardo Group Americas, and Kristen is with Leading to Lean. Stay with us here on Connect and Collaborate. We'll have more right after this break. Thanks so much for staying with us here on Connect and Collaborate. We are connecting with Kristen Muzzy from Leading to Lean, and she has a special guest with her today. Richard Rahn is principal with Leonardo Group Americas, a lean consulting company based in Boulder.
Yes. Welcome back, Richard.
Yeah,
it's great
thank
to have
you.
And we're having a great conversation about lean manufacturing, Darwin, and the future of learning. So we've been talking about lean manufacturing, but you've really piqued my interest. Darwin, what's the relationship of between Darwin and lean?
Well, here's what I've been thinking. I always try to look for connections between my lean work and other things, other disciplines. And I picked up a book a few weeks ago called The Blind Watchmaker. So it's basically Richard Dawkins is the author, talking about evolution, right? And I kind of sort of knew about evolutionary theory, but I realized I really didn't know very much at all. So I'm learning a lot reading this book. But one of the things he mentioned was this idea of how difficult it is to appreciate time, as a human being, how long these eons are, where this evolution can actually happen. It's hard for our minds to really grasp the how many eons of time have actually passed, if you happen to believe in that kind of thing.
Sure.
But people ask the same kind of thing about Toyota or about lean. Can we just look at an example like Toyota and copy them, right? Can we speed up our evolution, in other words, by just copying what Toyota did? So the interesting example that Dawkins gave was the human eye. The human eye is extremely complex, we know,
yes,
right? And so you might make a case that how could that possibly happen by accident or through random, selection? That's impossible. But could you imagine a human eye that's exactly as it is, but with one small change? That's easy to imagine, right?
Right.
Imagine an eye, but with one small little difference.
Okay. Change the color. Change the color.
A few, photocells or whatever are different. That's easy to imagine, right?
Yes.
Now, could you take that we'll call that IX, and could you take that IX and then for that imagine another small, tiny little insignificant change to that?
Yes.
Easy, right?
Yes.
So if you just take enough steps backwards, you're going to end up with an eye that looks nothing like our human eye.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
Go enough steps back.
Yes. If you keep taking that.
Going, right. And each step was almost insignificant. But if you have enough time and enough steps, then you're going to get something that's completely different.
Okay.
So how does that apply to lean? Imagine a company like Toyota in 1950, almost bankrupt. No, probably extremely primitive business procedures, et cetera, but they had this goal to improve, and they were going to experiment, and they were going to try things, and if those things worked, they were going to keep them. If they didn't work, they were going to throw them aside.
Sure.
And so they were going to evolve. Now, this isn't random selection. This isn't genetics. This is simply human beings, coming up with improvement ideas. But not all those ideas are good ideas, right? People come up with bad ideas. So they keep what works and they discard what doesn't work. And so now, 60 or 70 years later, you have this model of excellence. But that model of excellence happened over thousands or maybe hundreds of thousands of small changes.
Sure.
Period of time. So I don't think that we can expect to just look at, say, a Toyota or any model of excellence you want to pick and just copy it. I think we can speed up our evolution by manipulating something of what they're doing, but we really have to evolve ourselves, as an independent, different organization, and really have that culture of continuous improvement, which is really the Darwinian kind of.
That's the key, right? Is that culture of continuous improvement.
Right. Right. Now, in the world of Darwin, that happens through mutations and random selection, and the stronger, faster animal survives and the weaker ones don't. In the world of business or humans, we can come up with better ideas and apply them and have a competitive advantage in the marketplace and make a little more money and be a little more successful.
Absolutely.
So it's really the same thing. So I like that idea. And,
that's awesome. What's the name of the book again?
The Blind Watchmaker.
The Blind Watchmaker. Interesting.
Yeah,
intriguing.
Very highly recommended. So this is really the essence of lean. If people wonder, what it is, there are lots of tools and techniques that we teach, and those are really important, I think. But those techniques, even at Toyota, they'd be the first to tell you that this technique called Kanban. That was great, but we don't do that anymore.
That's right.
We came up with another way.
They keep continuously improving.
They're not at all afraid of trying something new and setting what to be considered the gold standard of the Toyota production system and just doing something else. So the proof is in the pudding, and you really see that as part of their culture.
Absolutely. And they're so willing to share what they do. That's been my experience in the whole working with Toyota and lean organizations, is that they're very, very willing to share what they do, because they believe in collaborating with one another and sharing ideas, because it's how we continuously evolve, continuously improve. If you harbor it all and don't share, you're not going to get new innovative ideas.
There's even a Japanese word for that. You learn something and then you share it.
That's
and they
right.
have I can't even remember what the word is, but
Yes.
they do have a term for that, and it's part of their formal process
Absolutely.
of learning. Yeah.
If I can chime in, you've mentioned Toyota and their lean kind of disciplines that have made it. Can you give us some examples of like maybe what changed? Or, what kind of changes did Toyota implement that made it more efficient or using less materials? Just
Sure.
so the audience can wrap our heads around it.
Maybe talk through the whole process flow and identifying the defect as early as possible versus the old way of doing things.
Yeah.
Where you have an entire car and then you find the defect?
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
I mean, we can give ourselves credit here in the U.S. for having a part of that that
Dr.
evolution.
Deming.
Yep. And maybe even Henry Ford.
Yes, absolutely.
But more recently, in the 1950s, a whole bunch of people from Toyota came over to the U.S. And what they were trying to, they were on a learning tour to see what they could find out, and they were trying to build a car company in Japan. And they went to Detroit and they visited Henry Ford, and they saw this enormous facility called River Rouge, the Ford factory, which was like 2 or 3 miles.
Oh, it's huge.
Wow.
I mean,
Can you imagine?
And the smokestacks were spewing the smoke, and they were punching out parts, and they saw mountains of parts, a month's worth of fenders, and just mountains of inventory.
Okay.
And it was pretty impressive. But they said, this is really impressive, but we can't do this.
We don't have the room.
We don't have the money.
You can't store that many fenders until you build the car.
Yeah, we can't. This is impossible. I mean, this is actually very, very wasteful. But and they've been successful. But we can't copy this.
Yeah.
But in their spare time, they went to a supermarket. They went to Piggly Wiggly, which is, I guess, a local brand. Piggly Wiggly.
We had one of those. Yep.
Southern.
And Piggly Wiggly was what really impressed them, because what they saw there was a small amount of inventory on a shelf, like 8 cans of Campbell's tomato soup, and then as those cans are being pulled off by the customers, a little stockkeeper will come following behind, maybe overnight or maybe during the day, and replace those cans. So very small amount of inventory turning very quickly, right? And the supermarket was a perfect example. And they took that idea, and that became the Kanban system, part of the Toyota production system. Small amounts of inventory on the factory floor. They're moving very, very quickly, and we replenish them often.
Yes.
And what that does for them is, number one, reduces the amount of floor space, because you don't have to store all this inventory. Number two, you don't have to pay for it, so the working capital is that much less. And then the quality is that much better, because what if all these fenders are defective?
Right.
Now I have a mountain of defective fenders.
Yeah. Or in today's day, what if I don't want that particular fender, right?
Well, the customer changed their mind. Yeah,
That's
this is
right.
last year's style. And hey, well, you still have to make the old style because I have a mountain of these fenders to use up.
Right.
So that's one of the early stories that supposedly is true, or maybe it's just part of the lean mythology.
Yeah.
But that Piggly Wiggly had a role in the original
lore.
Kanban system.
I love it.
Okay, we're talking with Richard Rahn. He's principal with Leonardo Group Americas, a lean consulting company, and Kristen Muzzy is helping lead the conversation here. We'll be back with more as we wrap up here. Stick with us on Connect and Collaborate, Voice of the Colorado Business Roundtable. We will have more right after this break.
Great. Thanks, Tammy.
Thanks. We're really happy to have you along today here on Connect and Collaborate as we talk with Kristen Muzzy from Leading2Lean, and we're talking with Richard Rahn from Leonardo Group Americas.
Great to be back. Thanks, Tammy.
Of course.
So we've been talking having a great conversation about lean manufacturing and Darwin and the connection between lean and Darwin theory. But Richard, question: how do I get asked this a lot when I start talking about, when I just say the title of my company, Leading2Lean. People ask, well, how do we learn about lean? Where do I go to learn about lean? And the Leonardo Group, you have some great options. So can you share with us how do you train? What's the best methods, and share with our audience about the Leonardo Group and learning Lean.
Sure. Well, it's the best way to learn anything probably is to do it. But I think it was Deming that said something about, doing without theory is, I forget how he worded it exactly, but it was like, unless you have an underlying theory that you're working with or towards, then just doing can be random activity.
Yes.
So I guess my own journey involved going to a class, right? Going to a formal class.
And that was my introduction to right?
While I was at Ball, they sent us to a workshop. It was a 4-day seminar.
Yeah.
And so that was, for us, that was a great introduction because there's a live instructor. Mm-hmm. It was, very well organized, structured, and we could learn about it in that way.
Sure.
Now, at that time, this was 1989, there wasn't much available in terms of options.
Sure.
Other than, because Lean at that time was kind of a secret.
Right.
I mean, it was
fairly new. It was fairly new.
Yeah, and it was new, and then companies were very paranoid about if they had some of these practices in place about not sharing them.
Yeah.
Because they regarded it, maybe rightfully so, as a competitive advantage. Mm-hmm. Now today with the internet, which didn't exist at that time, now the information is much more widely available. Mm-hmm. So if someone's interested in finding out more, where I would start these days, I would start with a book if you're a reader. I mean, there are lots of really excellent books on the subject. My favorite book is Toyota Kata, and then K-A-T-A.
Yes.
I don't know if you've read that one, but
that is a good book. Yeah, and then older ones, Lean Thinking.
Lean Thinking is a classic.
Excellent. Yeah.
I mean, they're just a host of really excellent, well-written books, very clear. Mm-hmm. But that's a start. To really get into anything in depth, you really have to apply it, and so if you don't have an opportunity to apply it, it's going to be hard for you, if you're listening to the show, right, to really understand what's involved.
That's right. We only remember, 20%, if we're lucky, 20% of, attending a training class.
Yeah.
When you walk away, unless you apply it, you've lost 80%.
Well, and you can read a book on how to play golf, but that doesn't mean you can go out and, actually...
so true.
Do well. So the alternatives to reading or to going to a class in today's world are quite a few. There are probably thousands of YouTube videos.
Yes.
That are out there. Again, somewhat random, but there is some good stuff out there that's available right away. We also have we've taken our classes, our live classes, and put them online. That's another common thing. So taking an online course.
Yeah.
Those are available from us or from other people as well in terms of learning Lean. And those are valuable in the sense that you can do it on your own time. Mm-hmm. They're very inexpensive.
On demand. To your point.
24/7.
Yeah.
They do have the challenge that you have to be disciplined about it. An online course, you have to be willing to block off some time and sit down and really go through it. Otherwise, you might find yourself signing up for classes and then never taking them.
Yeah.
Which I mentioned because I've done that myself more than once. Sounds like a great class, but I find I didn't take it. As a matter of fact, I went through the APIX program. I don't know if you're familiar with this, the American Production and Inventory Control.
Yeah, I studied APIX as well.
And I think one thing that motivated me when I went through that program was the fact that I was going to get a reward at the end.
The certification, CPIM, right?
A diploma, right? That had some value in the marketplace. My boss at the time strongly suggested I do this, so that was part of my motivation. But also, I was going to get a certificate. Mm-hmm. And so, if you don't have the opportunity to apply Lean in your own work environment, which is a reward in itself, then getting some kind of certification is another way to keep you focused on learning about this. And this is another thing that we've started at the Leonardo Group, offering a certification in some aspects of Lean, the industrial engineering aspects of Lean, which we're calling mixed model line design and mixed model material management.
On that note, mixed model line design, can you give us a brief description of what that means? If these days it's very rare that a company is
only building one product. You have a variety of different products that are similar, but have some differences, not just color, but maybe size, options, capabilities. At Toyota Material Handling, for example, they have 50 base models of fork trucks, if you can believe that. But beyond that, every fork truck has some kind of unique thing. The customer wanted the mirror over here, or they wanted this special little control over there, etc. So everyone could be different. So unless you understand how to build those kind of products, then you could find yourself really being very inefficient because the delivery of materials is not being delivered smoothly, or when you change from one type of model to another, people are confused, they don't know what to do, or there are delays in the flow of work because one was harder and another one was easier, etc. So our area of specialty in the world of lean is to address those kind of environments. Automotive is very classic kind of mixed model environment, but industrial products, electronics, there are a lot of say industries where they're doing a lot of different products that are, of course, have to be similar in certain ways, a lot of different products, and they want to do that efficiently. They want to do that in the shortest time possible. They want to design a production line that can accomplish that. And that's not a minor detail, right? That's really a challenge. So we've taken a more difficult aspect of really industrial engineering and put a lean flavor to it, and that's really what we do. So that's what we mean by mixed model.
Gotcha.
And line design is the workflow, and then of course you have the materials that have to be delivered to do the work. So we like to say it's two wings of a bird. So both wings have to fly, right? The bird's not going to fly with one wing. So.
Right. That's a great analogy.
No matter
how
well constructed or perfect it is.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah, you could have a perfect line, but no materials. Well, nothing's going to happen, and vice versa. Right? Great material delivery, but the line doesn't work because it's not well balanced, and people don't have good standard work instructions, etc. So.
Right. So what do you find to be the best, the most successful learning method that you see your clients undertake?
Well,
I know it's evolving, right? The whole Darwin thing.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, I just spent time yesterday with one of our bigger clients talking about this very issue, because we'd been doing training classes for them for a long time, and they were very happy with that. But what we were commenting on was the fact that if someone takes a class and then doesn't have a chance to apply it, then there's going to be a time delay, and what happens is what we call the forgetting curve. There's a learning curve that happens when they take the class, and then right away, as soon as the class ends,
forgetting curve
starts to kick in.
I'm glad to know there's a name for it.
Right.
Yeah, well, it makes sense, doesn't it? We all know that's true.
Yes.
We take a class and then we forget. So what we're doing now is really blending the two. I guess they call it blended learning, right?
Yes.
I guess there's a technical term for it. But we're teaching a small piece of this roadmap, and then we apply it immediately. And then we'll go on to the next piece, and then we'll apply it immediately. And so we're going to try this out with a fairly large project with this company. It's a big Fortune, it's a Fortune 100 company. They have a large production line, but we're going to try this. I don't see what could go wrong exactly, but it's a new experience for them.
That's great.
Yeah. And
That's great. So are you going to be doing the training on site and then working with them to apply it? I see.
Yeah, training on site, but in small chunks.
Yeah.
And then we spend a few days on site doing it, and then we leave and let them finish their homework, and then we'll come back and take the next piece of the journey.
That's actually how we implement our software, our lean software as well. We take a very lean approach and a blended learning approach, and we're right there as they're using it. So there's not these lengthy, you've got to learn all of this. We're right there on site, so we take that same approach. Yeah. Yeah,
because if you can't apply it, you're going to forget, and so a lot of the training that actually takes place is waste from that point of view.
That's right.
Because if you forget what you've learned, then you would have been better off not going to begin with and save the money.
Yeah. Total waste. We could have a show on that, exactly. So to find out more about the Leonardo Group, it's leonardogroup.com.
Leonardo Group Americas.
Americas. I forgot the Americas. I'm sorry, Richard.
With an S on the end.
And thank you so much, Richard Rahn, for being with us today. And thank you, Kristen Muzzy.
Yes.
Thank you for listening. Have a great day. Enjoy your weekend.
Have a great weekend, everybody.